Hey, security peeps, it's Renee Small. We are back here again, all of us, finally. I am here with my fabulous co-host, Chris Foulon. Say hi to everyone, Chris.
Hey, everyone.
And Jules
Okafor.
I'm sorry, Jules. Jules is here with us today. Thank you so much for being here and jumping in so quickly. We have had so many fabulous people on, and today we had a cancellation, and Jules was so kind enough to jump in and give her time at the last minute. So we really, really appreciate you, Jules.
Thank you.
So we are going to jump in now. As you all probably have already seen or know about us, Breaking Into Cybersecurity, this crowdcast is focused on folks who've broken into the industry within the past 5 years. And we want to jump in with Jules, learn all about you, Jules. We want to know what made you be interested in the field. And then we'll start digging into more questions around how you actually were able to break in.
Great.
So go for it.
Excited. So my name is Juliet Okafor. I'm called Jules in the industry. I am currently the Senior Vice President of Global Sales for Habituate, but I'm also the CEO of Revolution Cyber, a company focusing on building out integrated security programs.
Very cool. You're like the biggest deal that we've had on here, I think.
Oh. Wow.
I know, we're excited.
I'm not sure if that says something about them or me. You know, no credit taken.
So tell us, how did you break into the field? Like, what made you get interested in cyber? Like, walk us through the process of how you got here today.
So I always talk to people about the fact that today and what people see came from a very difficult road. So in 2013, I was pregnant with my second child and lost my job in March. Essentially, I had studied law. I knew I was going to be the biggest, baddest person in sales, and 15 of us were fired on the same day. I found out that day. I found out maybe a week later I was pregnant, and so had no opportunities, and really just decided I was going to stay home with the kid and with my pregnancy, and then with my other child for 10 months. At the tail end of it, I had basically said, you know, whatever it is that I do next, it needs to be an industry that's going up. So prior to that, I sold to libraries. I was in real estate at the height of the recession. And then I also had sold into a lot of other industries that really market research was going down. I think, you know, with social media, people didn't need it as much. And I applied to a job online. I applied to a job on Craigslist. When I tell people that, they're like, are you kidding? Like, that's where all the bad stuff is happening in security, but that's where I found my first job. It was for an account executive position. It was for an MSSP out in Ashburn. I lived in Bowie at the time, knew it would be 2 hours. And I always say, I thank God that I drove there and the building existed. And so, so 2 guys took a chance on a woman who had no experience. But what I would say got me into the role was I had a passion, and I told them to just give me a chance, and I would prove to them that I could do a good job. And I was offered the job, and that was 2014. I was offered the job in October, and within 6 months, they fired my boss, and I was his boss. And I built out the first SOC at the Bank of Monaco. And so it's an amazing story how I got into it, but it wasn't planned, and I really had to beg for an opportunity, and I got the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell us about your experience. I guess it sounds like you were drinking from a fire hose. How did you go about doing that and getting to such a successful place? So,
you know, the biggest, I guess, misconception about being good in a sales role or in a consulting role is people think that it's like used car sales. In security, that's not the case. You have to understand the customer, you have to understand the market, you have to understand the product, and then you have to understand exactly what the problems and the challenges are that the company is facing. So what I did is I sat every single day with the SOC team. I had to understand what issues were coming up, what they were promising the customer, what threats were being posed into the environment. And then I had to understand how they were working day to day in order to respond quicker, faster. What made us different than the next guys? And within about a few months, the guys were bringing me into meetings because they wanted me to understand so that I wasn't overselling the expectation. And what I did was I collaborated with the technical teams. I sat in on meetings. I came to work early. I stayed late. And ultimately, what I found was the more I could partner with groups that I relied upon to do my work, the better I became as a salesperson. That's really what I think is the driver for my career, has been building strategic partnerships and helping people who can then help me.
That's fascinating. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, we often talk about how cyber is such a broad field, and it just goes to show, like, we need everyone in all the different aspects of it to help promote the industry and to not oversell expectations so that the customers don't end up on the bad end of a deal. And I love that approach of yours.
Yes. I think, and also there's a lot of mystification in security. Security is a business problem, just like all the other problems that exist in a business. So only technical people can't solve a business problem. You need lots of different business people with different skill sets. So when I came to the table, I already had a law degree. So I knew how to understand a problem and build a case for the problem, right? Which is critical in cybersecurity. But I also had high analytical skills. So I knew how to take something I didn't know and break it down so I could learn and digest the pieces. And then better yet, communication skills. So I knew how to talk to the people who knew better than me how to get it done. I think a lot of times we think you need to be a pen tester, you need to be a hacker, you need to be, you need to have all these certifications, and those are important. But the business skills you need in order to relate to other people are much more foundational and much more critical.
That's such a valid point. We say that the people who've come on this crowdcast have been from so many different backgrounds. And Chris drills it in every time and says, we need people from all different backgrounds. And you hit the nail on the head, specifically around the business. When I'm talking to leadership and trying to understand what it is they need from a HR perspective and a recruitment perspective, and I mean, you hit on every one, the communication skills, like they don't need, as they call all the time, propeller heads. It's like the constant, everyone thinks like, oh, I'm the best technical person. And absolutely, we need best technical people. But we additionally need the communication skills. Your law degree probably comes in so handy for them, having that background, the analytical piece, the communications piece, and bringing it all together, and then being able to speak to people at all levels, because you're talking to the SOC team who are probably, more junior, and then you're taking that information, then you're going into the sales meetings with the executives that are making the business decisions. So being able to communicate at all levels is definitely key as well. I want to know more about the process on Craigslist. So tell me, what was posted? What made you even look at that job? What else were you looking for on Craigslist? Because people ping us all the time, and the whole premise behind breaking into cybersecurity, is that I feel like everybody we talk to got their job a different way.
Yes.
So this is awesome. Tell me about Craigslist.
So when I was starting my career, there was this book called The Accidental Salesperson, and like it taught you, if you just had a career in sales, like how you needed to get into it. I think we need a book called The Accidental Security Person, because to be honest, everybody happens into it. I feel like there are not a lot of people who, went to school, knew they'd grow up to be security people. But what I often, so when I went on Craigslist, I was looking for a job, not security job. I was looking for a job, a sales job specifically. But, the criteria that I set for myself on Craigslist was, I wanted to be with a small company. I wanted someplace I could grow my career, and I wanted a company that would value my experience. So those were kind of the criteria across the board. As I mentor people all the time looking to get into security. The biggest thing I need people to know is your resilience and grit will be the defining character between you getting a job and someone else getting a job. So there's Monster, there's Career Builder, there's Dice, there's Indeed, there's LinkedIn, there are thousands and thousands of jobs that people say are available. The question is, what are you looking for? How do you define yourself? And do you stop when you keep hearing the no's? Because here's the key. If they had told me no, I would have gone back and I would have gone and done it again. You know why? I had 2 little kids at home that were relying on me to make money, and I knew that I could not fail. If you go into the mindset with the I cannot fail, then all you're doing is saying, this person said no, but I've got to keep going until I find the person who will say yes. And the most important part is, how do I find a network of people? So my resume stands out because this person is walking my resume into the person to make the decision. How do I, work with someone like me, or talk to people who have a tremendous network? Like I've got almost 10,000 people on LinkedIn that I have first connections with, that I built over the course of this cybersecurity career. And I know that if I need a job, when I found this new job with Habituate, the first thing I did was go to my network. And I asked them to put my resume in for me and to give me a good word. In security, it's such a small industry, and people are risk averse. You've got to reduce the risk that they're taking bringing you in. And how do you do that? By getting closer to people, talking to people, and admitting you need the help. I think too many of us are afraid to admit we need help.
That's so true. I was on a podcast the other day, and the host summarized some of the advice that I was giving, that we ask what is predominantly in our industry known as introverts to go out and meet people and talk to people and communicate. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's ways to do it that it's not as challenging, because some people might be afraid of the face-to-face, but you could do Twitter, you could do LinkedIn, where you still have that comfort behind the screen while still making that connection.
Agreed. So my senior vice president role at Habituate Chad reached out to me on Twitter. I don't know if he'll ever admit it, but he had seen some of the things that I posted, and he liked my point of view. And he said, do you know anybody who would be interested in this job? I'd like to consider you. And it happened that I was available. So that was another situation where people came to me. And a lot of times with introverts, you've got to figure out a way to draw people to you, so you don't have to keep going out of your way to get them closer and to offer you jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. And Chris, I listened to Chris. I was going to talk about your podcast, or him being on the other side of this, is now Chris is such a celebrity that he's being invited on podcasts, multiple podcasts. And so he made such a valid point. And we talk about that because we listen to the folks that come on here and they say, I applied to 200 positions and I've done all this stuff. And, we're trying to, part of bringing this together is like, it does not have to be that difficult. And
yes.
You made such a valid point when you said persistence, or my mom used to always say, persistence seldom fails.
Yeah.
So when you said you had those 2 little kids that were counting on you, you could not fail. Like, losing is not an option.
Agreed.
So doing whatever you need to do. And from an introvert's perspective, posting, and Chris is phenomenal about keeping us all informed with all these podcasts that he listens to in his 2-hour commute to and from work. And
the biggest thing, look, so here's the thing. I had 2 kids, but you might have a doggy baby, you might have student loans, you might have parents who need you to get out of the house. You might have just this desire to see yourself succeed. Whatever it is that's your internal driver, use that. The other thing is, you must have a perspective that's unique, that is drawn from your resume. So too many people are sending out these resumes that say absolutely nothing about what they are and who they are and what they can do. Get a cover letter on your resume. If you can, spend the money. This is not the place to be cheap. Spend the money. It may cost you, but you want to have a narrative of how your experience has brought you to where you are and why it's relevant for the job you're applying to. If you can do that in a very, very successful way, you will get the job. Now, I can't guarantee people will be able to see how brilliant you are and it jumps off the page, but you increase the likelihood of getting a job, because breaking into cybersecurity is like breaking into any industry. You've got to be somebody people want to be a part of, to know, to work with. And I think that people think their talents alone will do it. Your personality has to shine in a resume. And I would say, as a salesperson, I've always known how to sell, and especially myself. So if you're an introvert, how do you get the skills to sell yourself? Because many of us are very humble. We don't want to look like we're bragging. Brag on your resume. Tell people what you can do, what you have done, what you haven't done yet, and then make the connection to their company. This industry is welcoming, but really, like I said, it's about risk, and it's an industry that really tries to avert risk, and we're afraid of people who can't demonstrate that they've done it before. But there's a lot of opportunity once you get in, and each one teach one. That's all I say. I help somebody else get in. That's our job.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, definitely. Pass the ladder back down.
Yes.
With regards to the recent point you just made with saying where you're not good at yet. So how do you close that gap? How do you keep up with the change in the industry?
Okay, so the stumbling question is always, what are your weaknesses? What are the things you don't do well? My answer is always, well, okay, I'm going to give you the real one. The real one I give people and the one that I should give people. So the real one I say is I come up with a strength that can be switched to a weakness. Like, I often work, I work more than I should on things. I have a hard time, moving on to new things. It sounds like I'm a workaholic, but essentially in this industry, being a workaholic isn't bad. So it's kind of, I'm taking something that could be considered a strength, I'm switching it to something that sounds negative, and then I say, well, the beauty is, in my future, I know that I want to delegate more, I want to make more time, work-life balance, and those sort of things. So you take a strength, switch it to a weakness, and then you give a reason how you're going to compensate for it. The answer that I want to give is, if you have a weakness, pick the one that allows for mentorship, right? So my biggest weakness was my technical skill always. When I joined, I had no background in it. And they asked me, okay, so why should we hire you? Despite the fact that you have no experience, you don't even know what security is. I said, here's the deal. I'll outwork everybody in order to get this role. I will read whatever books you recommend. What books would you recommend so I can actually get up to speed on it? Or I'd say, I'll sit in the SOC with whatever technical people that you want me to sit with. So you have to take a weakness that you have and then admit to it, but then you immediately have to tell them how they can help you to fix it. And if you can give them something that's doable, then they can train you up. Now, it may be a situation where you actually reduce your value, but the question is not whether you want to make top dollar, it's how do I get in? Get in and then move up. But admit to the weakness that someone else can help you fix. Don't admit to, I have a hard time waking up in the morning. Don't do that. That's not going to help you out. Admit to something that is coachable, that someone can help you to fix, or that you already have a fix for, that you're in the process of fixing. Like, one of my weaknesses is I don't have a certification in, I don't have a CEH, but I want to be a hacker. Okay, well, how do you intend to fix that? Well, I'm in the process of working on that, and I have a number of I'm in BWise. I go to a number of cons at this time, and I'm trying to learn how to do that. Those are things that are coachable, that can be fixed.
I think Your interviewing tips are awesome. Step one, you talked about how to position yourself on that resume to get the interview. And then getting that interview, when you get in there, some of the questions that they ask and providing the types of answers that are going to resonate so people are not running for the hills. So you talk about kind of, there's so many things to unpack in what you just talked about, from connecting with folks and having your network on LinkedIn and Twitter and social media, pushing out information that you and, Chris, you guys do this phenomenally, like constantly pushing information out. Because when you were like, we've never met really or connected, but it's like Jules is ready. Let's get Jules on, like, oh, we want Jules, and it's funny because we know each other from LinkedIn, and then what ends up happening, Chris and I, the funniest thing, we've been doing this for, when did we connect, Chris? Last year? We connected it hasn't been that long. We connected like a year ago, if that. And then, very quickly got into doing this. And we just met each other in person at B-Sides Nova, this year.
Oh my goodness.
we had not even met each other in person. And so between the phone calls, the, you know, the text messages and all that, and from doing this, it's just like, oh my God, I can't even believe that we haven't physically met each other. But so much happens with social media. So much happens. And there's been so much, you know, back and forth with us and with other people and connections and all that. And so you almost feel like it's not even like you feel like you know the person. You know the person.
You know the person.
I know Chris. I could recommend Chris to whatever.
And you know him more than you might know your peers or people you live next to. That's yeah,
absolutely. So being that, you know, doing the networking that you guys do is just so awesome, because then everyone knows you. And like you said, when you're looking for a new opportunity, or when Chris was looking, you know, making a change and what have you, people are coming to you, which is what you always want, is to get people attracted to you. You want to be a magnet, which is what I talk about on another end when I talk to the leadership. When it comes to the recruiting aspect, I'm like, you want people to be like, you want to be a magnet. Yes. That's one piece of it. Then you also brought in the, you know, having somebody advocate on your behalf, and having that, you know, when you do have the resume buttoned up and you do have everything and it looks great and you're LinkedIn and you've been doing all these things, then having that network of people. So if Jules is referring somebody and passing that resume, it's going to come, like you said, it's eliminating the risk of who is this random person, like, oh, Jules recommended them, okay, they must be good. Chris recommended somebody this morning, and I jumped on the phone with him, and he's probably going to get an interview immediately. So things like that, where it's just like, okay, if it's coming from this recommendation, they're probably top notch. They're probably, you know, like it removes that risk factor, right? And then another thing, people want to connect and work with people they know and like, and all that other good stuff that also add that level of it. But you hit on some really, really great things when it comes to that interviewing part, and that kind of like looking in a different place, because who would have ever thought to look on Craigslist for a job? And who would have thought that a security job? Now I got to go look on Craigslist. Like, I don't even know Craigslist. What's going on Craigslist?
I'm hoping the company that I work for stopped advertising on there, but you know, we never. but definitely look, because a lot of small companies have to start there. And the other thing is, if you're looking to break into cybersecurity, start with small businesses. They can't afford the kinds of $250 an hour, $250,000, $200,000, and they sometimes just need somebody who they can designate as security person, who will then help with IT things and just be willing to wear many hats. So it's also important to say, okay, well, I'm willing to start with the company that would be best suited for me, as opposed to who I want to work with, right? Because sometimes we want to work with the Microsofts, and we want to work with all these big names. Sometimes it's okay, I want to work with Joe's Shack, whatever it is, or Joe's accounting firm. And Joe is willing, he's the owner, he needs a security program, I'm an analyst. Okay, I don't have all the skill sets, but Joe, I'm willing to do that. I need some training. I need these things. Have the conversation. There are a lot of people who I mentor now, they're afraid to have the conversation. They're afraid of the rejection. You got to get past the rejection. You got to just talk to as many people as possible. And then what do you learn from each conversation? And use that as a driver to keep going. If you haven't been turned down at least, you know, for 70% of the jobs that you applied for, you're not trying hard enough. You know, when people say, oh, you know, I put a resume in, I immediately got offered the job. You're wonderful, great. But what jobs maybe you're applying to only the jobs that you're good for now. Maybe you're not stretching yourself. Maybe you should be in a higher job. This industry is very, very, it teaches you lessons fast. You've got to be able to react to them and turn them into how you continue to drive your career success. It's so important. How you get in is how you move up. So keep grinding.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great advice for individuals. Think about where you want to go and what will take you from where you are now to where you want to get. So for example, for me, I want to become a CISO. So my next step will be like a director type role, and managing director level things before I could become a CISO. So me is preparing myself to managing people, managing budgets, managing programs, making those sorts of steps before I could get to the CISO level. So think about where you want to go, and then you can break it down to smaller steps and how you want to get there.
And even if you don't know where you want to go, the key is to keep your mind open to what the role is. So when I first started in law school, I never thought I'd be in cybersecurity, but a lot of it applied. And I did it because I thought it was a good education, right? So if you want to get a certification, don't say, oh, I know that I want to be this, but I don't know how this applies. Get the cert. We're a continuous learning industry. While you're getting a job, keep learning, keep going out to talk to people, keep finding new books, new tools, new resources. And I find that for me, when I was at Fortress and I was hiring people, because I brought a young man who was he had no experience, but he was so driven, he made $140,000 out the gate. And I advocated for him because he said, Juliet, if you just get me in, I'll do the work. He is phenomenal now, doing all kinds of NERC assessments and speaking broadly. But somebody will see your value. You just got to keep going. And you have to be humble. It's a humbling experience. You got to be humble about it. Yeah.
And I would add that, realizing, or it's okay that you don't know everything. It's okay, because I think what tends to happen, you brought up some points about people feel like the rejection, or they don't want to hear the no and what have you. And most of these, we talked about, I think, Chris, were you and I talking about job descriptions, or was I just listening to you talk about the job descriptions on podcasts? How these job descriptions are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they ask for everything under the sun. It's virtually impossible. A lot of times they come to, and I see this as an HR professional, I push back a lot, because a lot of the times the managers pull them from somewhere. They find a job description from somebody else or whatever, and they want to add their things. Or a lot of times what tends to happen is Jules is phenomenal. She's been in the job for 5 years. She started as this. She has a law degree, so we got to get somebody else with a law degree. She had this. She had all these certs over the past 5 years, so this person has to have all these certs. We want another Jules. It's like, okay, Jules is $250,000. Like, you can't get that for $75K or whatever it is.
And
right?
Jules is paying her student loans back. We shouldn't do that to people, okay?
Yes, Jules is awesome, and it would be phenomenal to get another Jules, but guess what? Do you really need that? Do you need
no. And you don't need a Jules. You need a Pablo, and you need a Peter, and you need a Jane, and you need all of us together.
Right.
That's the problem, is when we hire people, it needs to be complementary, not duplicative.
Yeah.
It needs to be complementary.
And they tend to, and I get it, because I've worked with hiring managers for years now. I mean, I've been in recruiting way too long, 17 years. I don't even know how I'm still doing it. But I've talked to managers, and I have to talk them off the ledge a lot of times, because they're like, no. Jules was awesome. We need another Jules. She's leaving. We got to get somebody just like her. And I'm like, okay, you have to understand that she's grown over, in that role. So yes, she took on all these things. Yes, Chris is amazing. When he came in 7 years ago, he's not the same person he is today. So we have to take this, what you're describing in this one job description is like 4 jobs. Yep. Nobody's going to have this kind of background. So on the other hand, though, the candidates are out there looking, the people looking to break into the industry, they see these jobs and they're like, oh my God, I would never, like Chris talked about on his podcast, and you're talking about now, or we're talking about the people, Chris said, he made an excellent point. Some people, if they see, to your point, if they don't have 100% of the things on the job description, they're not going to apply.
Oh my God.
Whereas an egotistical, another person might say, oh, I have 1 or 2 of these things, I'll apply. So you get, people who could very well do that job, not applying, not getting the rejections, they're saying, absolutely not. And we have to get away from that fear of.
We have to stop blaming the candidates. Yeah. There's a lot of candidate bashing that I see online. And it's like, it's ridiculous, because what we do isn't easy. So you need to build the confidence of the people coming in. But people apply, we don't get back to them, or we put them through these these jumping through hoops in order to get the job. And then when they get it, we say, okay, do you have 10 years experience? We're going to pay you $60,000. No, it's ridiculous. So on the other hand, part of what the work is that I'm doing on the other side is I sit on the board for Fordham University, which is where I went for my master's. I'm helping them to build out a program. It's called the Bridge to Cyber, so that they can take people with some of the requisite technical skills we need in risk management and project management in the legal career and move them into cybersecurity jobs and policy making in risk management and security portfolio program project management. And I'm helping the schools understand that we have an issue. You're not giving them the requisite business skills in order to get the jobs, but you're charging them all this money for the degrees. Then they're going into the companies won't pay them what they just paid for the degree. So people are looking for these high paying jobs. And then these jobs that we really need filled, like the analyst role, sit empty because the companies don't want to invest in the people. They don't want to invest in developing a whole person. So we have a problem on a number of levels. And what I'm seeing happen is that there are companies coming together to build paths into the industry that are sustainable, that are repeatable. So a company like, for instance, a major airline or like a major bank can say, these are the core skill sets we need for this person to have walking in the door.
No.
No.
Looks like Jules fell off. Oh my God. And we're in our last couple, like, we're running overtime right now.
I know. It's just been riveting conversation.
I know. She's so good. We have to bring her back. Oh man. Well, she dropped off. Jules dropped off. And we're 32 minutes. We're a couple minutes past the hour. So I am going to do this. Let me see if Jules looks like she's coming back on. If we don't get her back on in a couple minutes, we will just end and then do a part 2 because this is so juicy. And I want to make sure that we get Jules back on here. Yeah, not seeing anything. Yeah, I don't think she's gonna make it back on.
No, well, it was great having her on, and yeah, we can.
Oh, there she is.
I'm back.
You're back. Okay, so Jules, we have like a couple seconds. We're actually over time.
Okay.
So what Chris and I were just saying is that this was so good and juicy, and the conversation is so good. And I mean, what you just talked about with the students and the schools, and we hear this, we see it, and I 100% agree. I actually want to partner up with you on some of this stuff because we get it. You know, the reason why Chris and I did this is because it's precisely what you're talking about. Precisely the points that you made. Great. So we have to have you back again. We're past the half an hour mark.
Okay.
And Chris, you want anything to add before we wrap?
No, just say I truly appreciate your time, love your advice, and maybe we'll do a Jules special.
We need a follow-up. We have to have you back on. Jules, thank you so much. Chris, thank you again. People are typing in saying they love this. Thank you. So
please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll do what I can. Hopefully I can come back.
Yes, okay, absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.